The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table. I sat across from my husband, John, who was engrossed in his phone. The clinking of silverware against plates filled the silence between us, a sound that had become all too familiar. I poured myself another cup of coffee, watching as he scrolled endlessly, oblivious to my presence. It was as if we were two strangers sharing a space rather than a married couple. I had tried to initiate conversation about our plans for the weekend, but my words seemed to vanish into the air. John nodded absent-mindedly, offering only half-hearted responses. I felt invisible, like a ghost haunting our once vibrant home. The distance between us had grown insurmountable over the years. I often wondered when we had stopped truly connecting. As I prepared for work, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My reflection revealed tired eyes and a forced smile. I used to radiate confidence and joy, now I felt like a shadow of my former self. The thought nagged at me, was this all there was? A monotonous routine punctuated by silence and unfulfilled desires? At the office in Cincinnati, whispers filled the air about our new boss, Mark Thompson. He was described as charismatic and engaging, a stark contrast to my own life at home. As I walked past the break room, snippets of gossip reached my ears. "Have you seen how he interacts with everyone?" one colleague remarked. "He really knows how to make people feel valued." Another chimed in, "I heard he's got big plans for our department." Their words stirred something within me, a flicker of interest that I hadn't felt in years. What would it be like to be seen again? To matter? The idea lingered at the back of my mind as I settled into my cubicle. The day dragged on with mundane tasks and endless emails until Mark called for an impromptu meeting. As we gathered in the conference room, he exuded an energy that captivated everyone's attention. His enthusiasm was infectious. He spoke passionately about upcoming projects and encouraged us to share our ideas openly. I found myself leaning forward, hanging on to his every word. There was something refreshing about being part of a team that felt alive with possibility instead of drowning in routine drudgery. During his presentation, he made eye contact with me several times, moments that sent unexpected warmth through me. Afterward, as we filtered out of the room, Mark approached me directly. "Megan," he said with a friendly smile that lit up his face. "I'd love to hear your thoughts on this project later." "Sure," I replied, surprised by how easily my heart raced at his attention. As days turned into weeks, our interactions became more frequent. We exchanged ideas during meetings and shared brief conversations during lunch breaks. Each exchange felt charged with unspoken energy. It was thrilling yet terrifying. One afternoon while grabbing coffee from Findlay Market, a bustling hub filled with local vendors, I overheard another conversation among coworkers discussing Mark's charm. "He really knows how to make people feel special," one woman said wistfully. "Yeah," another agreed. "He has this way of making you feel like you're the only person in the room." A pang of longing hit me hard as their words resonated within me. What would it be like to feel special again? To have someone genuinely interested in who I was beyond being just a wife or employee? By then, it became impossible to ignore the growing connection between Mark and me during work hours, a bond fueled by shared laughter and mutual respect but complicated by my marriage vows weighing heavily on my conscience. In quiet moments alone at home with John, like when we sat side by side on the couch watching television, I felt increasingly restless. Our conversations revolved around mundane topics, bills to pay or chores left undone, while we both avoided discussing anything deeper or more personal. One evening after dinner while cleaning up dishes together, John asked if everything was okay between us, his tone laced with concern, but I brushed him off with a vague response about being tired from work. As time passed and business trips loomed on the horizon for our department's new initiative led by Mark, excitement mixed uneasily with apprehension within me. Would this trip lead somewhere unexpected? Would it offer an escape from my stagnant life? On the day before departure for Cincinnati's annual trade show, an event buzzing with energy, I received an email from Mark outlining our itinerary for meetings and networking opportunities scheduled throughout the weekend. His message concluded with an invitation: "Let's make sure we take some time after hours to unwind." My heart raced at the prospect of spending time alone with him outside work. Would this be an opportunity for something more? A chance to explore feelings long buried beneath layers of routine? That evening, after packing my suitcase carefully, selecting outfits that would strike just the right balance between professional yet approachable, I stood before my bathroom mirror contemplating what lay ahead while brushing through my hair absent-mindedly. With each stroke came doubts swirling around in my mind. Was it wrong to seek connection elsewhere? Wasn't it natural for anyone feeling neglected in their marriage? But despite those uncertainties lingering like shadows behind closed doors waiting patiently for light, the thought of unfulfilled desires began settling deeper into my consciousness as anticipations swirled around potential encounters ahead. The conference room buzzed with a mix of anticipation and tension as we gathered for the first meeting of the project. My new boss, Daniel, stood at the front, his presence commanding attention. I watched him speak, captivated not just by his words but by the way he carried himself, confident yet approachable, a rare combination that drew people in. As the discussion progressed, I found myself leaning forward, hanging on to every detail he shared about our upcoming goals. My colleagues chimed in with questions and ideas, but it was Daniel's insights that resonated with me most. Each moment spent in his presence ignited a spark of excitement within me, something I hadn't felt in years. During a break, I stepped outside for some fresh air. The crisp Cincinnati breeze felt invigorating against my skin, a welcome contrast to the stuffy atmosphere inside. I took a deep breath and tried to clear my mind of distractions when Daniel joined me on the patio. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his tone casual yet sincere. "Not at all," I replied, surprised by how easily our conversation flowed. We talked about everything from work to our favorite local restaurants. He mentioned a hidden gem near Findlay Market that served the best sandwiches in town. "I'll have to check it out," I said, feeling more relaxed than I had in months. As we spoke, the connection between us deepened. We shared stories about our lives, his recent move to Cincinnati for work and my struggles to balance family and career. Each revelation felt like peeling back layers of ourselves. It was refreshing to share my thoughts without fear of judgment. At one point, Daniel paused and looked directly into my eyes. "You know," he said softly, "it's rare to find someone who understands the pressures we face in this industry." His words struck a chord within me. The weight of my own dissatisfaction with life came flooding back, the missed connections with my husband and the loneliness that had settled into my daily routine like an unwelcome guest. "I get that," I admitted quietly. "Sometimes it feels like we're just going through the motions." He nodded thoughtfully before glancing away as if gathering his thoughts. The silence stretched between us for a moment before he broke it again. "It's important to find joy in what we do." Suddenly aware of how close we were standing, I felt an overwhelming urge to bridge that gap further, a desire for connection that had been absent from my life for far too long. When lunch arrived later that day, Daniel suggested we grab a bite together instead of joining the larger group. My heart raced at the thought. Part of me hesitated while another part was eager to explore this unexpected opportunity. Over sandwiches and coffee at a quaint cafe nearby, we continued our conversation about personal ambitions and dreams deferred. Each shared story seemed to draw us closer together until I could no longer ignore the chemistry building between us. In an unguarded moment after sharing particularly personal anecdotes about family expectations and career aspirations, Daniel leaned closer and whispered something that made my heart skip, a simple acknowledgement of how rare it was to connect on such levels. And then, we kissed. The world around us faded. It was just him and me in that instant, two souls yearning for understanding amidst chaos. The thrill mingled with guilt as reality rushed back and like cold water splashing over warm skin. "What are we doing?" I breathed out once our lips parted. "I don't know," he replied honestly, searching my eyes for answers neither of us could provide. That moment lingered heavily between us as lunch ended too soon. We returned to work with unspoken tension hanging over our heads like storm clouds threatening rain. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Meetings felt longer than usual as thoughts raced through my mind. What did this mean? Was this just an escape from reality? Back at home later that evening, I tried to shake off what had happened but found myself replaying every detail over and over again, the kiss lingering on my lips like an intoxicating secret waiting to be revealed or buried deeper still. My husband greeted me at the door with his usual distracted demeanor, a quick hug followed by him diving back into his phone while dinner simmered on the stove. It struck me how disconnected we had become. Even mundane moments felt foreign now compared to what had transpired earlier. As night fell over Cincinnati and shadows danced across familiar walls filled with memories both cherished and forgotten, I couldn't help but wonder what path lay ahead after crossing this invisible line drawn between loyalty and longing. Days turned into weeks as our professional relationship continued alongside these newfound personal connections during meetings filled with stolen glances and subtle touches. A brush against fingers here or an accidental bump during discussions there became charged moments laden with meaning only we understood. Yet guilt gnawed at me relentlessly each time I returned home where silence reigned supreme, the kind punctuated only by distant sounds echoing from another room where my husband sat engrossed in television shows meant for distraction rather than connection. What started as mere attraction began morphing into something more complicated. An emotional bond forming unexpectedly amidst business talks turned personal exchanges filled with laughter tinged by vulnerability shared under fluorescent lights illuminating conference tables scattered across corporate offices throughout downtown Cincinnati. But despite these moments offering solace from loneliness lurking behind closed doors within my marriage, doubt loomed large like thunderclouds gathering overhead threatening storms yet unseen waiting patiently until they burst forth unleashing chaos upon unsuspecting lives below them. I found myself questioning whether this affair could ever lead anywhere good or simply unravel everything already fragile surrounding me, a delicate web spun from years spent building trust now teetering on brink ready for collapse should any wrong move occur. And then came that fateful call one evening while sitting across from Daniel at dinner discussing project updates when suddenly my phone buzzed insistently on silent mode beside me drawing attention away from everything else unfolding around us. It was him, my husband's name flashing across screen illuminating darkness surrounding intimate moments shared just moments before leaving no room left untouched by turmoil brewing beneath surface hidden away carefully until now. Daniel's expression shifted immediately upon seeing who was calling. Concern etched across features previously filled laughter sparks now replaced by tension palpable enough almost suffocating air surrounding us both making breaths feel labored under scrutiny placed upon choices made without foresight leading towards unknown consequences, awaiting inevitable confrontation looming ahead. The phone rang again, a sharp intrusion into the fragile cocoon we had woven in that hotel room. Daniel's name still glowed ominously on the screen, a reminder of the life I had temporarily set aside. My heart raced, not from passion but from a fear that clawed at the edges of my newfound connection with my boss. "Are you going to answer it?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The air between us thickened with unspoken questions. I hesitated, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I couldn't let him pull me back into the reality I was trying to escape. Not now, not when everything felt so raw and alive. Daniel's gaze held mine for a moment longer before he looked away, his expression clouding with uncertainty. We had shared so much in these last few days, conversations that peeled back layers of our lives, revealing vulnerabilities I hadn't anticipated. The way he listened made me feel seen in ways I hadn't experienced in years. That evening, after dinner at a local restaurant where laughter echoed off the walls and candles flickered like stars captured in glass, we found ourselves walking along the riverbank. The city lights danced upon the water's surface, creating a shimmering path that seemed to lead us somewhere beyond our current lives. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" he asked suddenly, stopping to lean against the railing. His eyes searched mine as if looking for answers hidden beneath the surface. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously, aware of how easily this conversation could veer into dangerous territory. "Life has so many paths," he mused. "Sometimes I wonder if we're all just too afraid to take a leap." His words resonated deep within me, a reflection of my own internal struggle. "I suppose," I replied slowly. "But what if those leaps lead us somewhere we can't return from?" He turned to face me fully now, his expression earnest yet gentle. "Sometimes it's worth taking that risk." As if drawn by an invisible force, we stepped closer together under the canopy of stars above Cincinnati's skyline. The world around us faded as we stood there, two souls seeking solace in each other's presence amidst chaos and confusion. And then it happened. Our lips met softly at first, a hesitant brush that ignited something within me I hadn't dared acknowledge until now. The kiss deepened as time stood still around us. It was an escape from everything that weighed heavy on my heart and mind. When we finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed with shock at what had just transpired, a sense of clarity began to settle over me like a warm blanket amidst the cold winds of uncertainty swirling through my thoughts. "Maybe this is what I've been missing," I whispered more to myself than to him. Daniel looked down at his feet for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "And what does that mean for us?" The question hung between us like an unspoken agreement. There was no easy answer or quick fix to our complicated lives waiting back home. Yet standing there beneath those stars felt like stepping onto new ground, a place where possibilities stretched infinitely before us. But reality crashed back in as memories of my husband flooded my mind, the moments spent together filled with laughter now overshadowed by silence and distance growing wider each day between us. I took a step back instinctively as guilt washed over me like ice water poured down my spine. "We shouldn't be doing this," I murmured almost reflexively. "Why not?" Daniel countered gently but firmly, his voice steady despite the tremor beneath it that hinted at vulnerability too raw for comfort. "Because," I paused, searching for words that wouldn't betray either of us completely but also conveyed how torn apart I felt inside by these conflicting emotions battling within me, loyalty versus desire, safety versus risk, love versus longing. As silence enveloped us once more under those twinkling stars above Cincinnati's riverfront, a city both familiar yet foreign, I realized this connection was shifting something fundamental within me. It could change everything about who I thought I was and what mattered most in life moving forward. The next few days blurred together in an intoxicating haze filled with stolen glances during meetings and whispered conversations late into the night when exhaustion threatened to steal away precious moments spent together outside work obligations looming overhead, like dark clouds threatening rain on an otherwise bright day ahead. We shared stories over breakfast while sipping coffee brewed strong enough to fuel our ambitions alongside secret confessions exchanged quietly beneath office desks during conference calls, a dance between professionalism and passion threading through every interaction until one evening arrived when we found ourselves alone once more. After dinner at another local spot known for its charm rather than culinary prowess, where laughter echoed again across tables filled with couples lost in their own worlds, we returned home only to find ourselves caught up in another moment neither one expected nor planned for. We spent the night together. Those words hung heavy between us long after dawn broke over Cincinnati's skyline, illuminating possibilities yet unseen ahead. But morning light brought clarity alongside consequences looming larger than either one could ignore anymore. The reality waiting just outside those hotel doors beckoning like sirens calling sailors toward rocky shores. My phone buzzed insistently on the bedside table where I'd left it charging overnight while wrapped safely within Daniel's arms. An anchor grounding me amidst turbulent waters swirling all around, threatening to pull apart everything I'd built over years spent navigating life's complexities alongside someone else entirely unaware of struggles hidden behind smiles exchanged daily. As soon as I glanced down at screen flashing bright, once more revealing name attached, unmistakably familiar, my husband, it felt as though time itself froze again while heart raced faster than ever before, knowing full well what awaited beyond this moment shared between two people lost in their own worlds, searching desperately for something more. I took a deep breath before answering, knowing full well this call would change everything forever. The moment I answered the call, the weight of my choices pressed heavily on my chest. "Hey, Megan," my husband's voice came through, steady yet tinged with a hint of concern. "How's the trip going?" I glanced at my boss, who was seated across from me in the dimly lit restaurant, his expression unreadable. The flickering candlelight danced between us, casting shadows that felt like secrets too heavy to share. "It's fine," I replied, forcing a casual tone that didn't quite match the turmoil inside me. "Just checking in. You've been working hard lately." There was an edge to his words, a note of something unspoken. I could sense he was trying to bridge a gap that had grown wider over time. "Yeah, you know how it is," I said, glancing at my boss again. He raised an eyebrow slightly, as if he could hear every word of this conversation. My heart raced at the thought of him knowing what lay beneath our professional facade. "Are you coming home tomorrow?" he asked. I hesitated. "Not sure yet. We might need to extend this meeting." The lie hung in the air between us like a thick fog. "Okay," he replied slowly. "Just don't forget about us when you get back." His words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with an ache I hadn't acknowledged in far too long. "I won't," I promised, though uncertainty lingered in my mind like an unwanted guest. After hanging up, I turned to my boss and forced a smile that felt strained. "Sorry about that." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Everything okay?" "Just family stuff," I said vaguely. He nodded but didn't press further. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand in his, a gesture both simple and electrifying. "You don't have to go through it alone." In that moment, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses from other tables, it felt as if we were cocooned in our own world where no one else existed. The intimacy of our connection deepened with every passing second. We spent dinner sharing stories about our lives, his rise through corporate ranks and my struggles with feeling invisible at home. Each revelation peeled back layers of vulnerability we had both kept hidden for too long. As dessert arrived, a rich chocolate torte, I felt a shift in the atmosphere around us. It was charged with unspoken possibilities. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper as he shared something personal about his childhood that struck a chord within me. We spent the night together, echoed in my mind as I contemplated how far we had come since our first meeting just weeks before. This wasn't just an affair, it felt like finding a part of myself I had lost along the way. Yet even amidst this newfound connection, doubt gnawed at me like an insistent itch I couldn't scratch away. What would happen when we returned home? Would this moment be merely an escape or signify something more profound? After dinner ended and we walked back to our hotel under a canopy of stars twinkling above Cincinnati's skyline, I couldn't shake off the feeling that everything was about to change again, but for better or worse. As we reached the door to my room, he paused and looked into my eyes with such intensity it made me breathless. "Megan." Before he could finish his thought, or perhaps before I could talk myself out of what was happening, I stepped closer and kissed him softly on the lips for what seemed like eternity but was merely seconds suspended in time. The kiss ignited something inside me, a flicker of hope amidst chaos, and all doubts faded away momentarily as reality blurred into this stolen moment of passion and connection. But then reality crashed down like thunder after lightning lit up the sky. Memories flooded back of evenings spent alone waiting for calls that never came, of yearning for attention from someone who seemed perpetually distracted by life's demands. That night marked another turning point. As sleep enveloped me later on after all had been said and done, the weight lifted off my shoulders felt so liberating yet so terrifying at once. I awoke early next morning feeling disoriented yet exhilarated. Sunlight streamed through curtains casting stripes across the floor as if illuminating paths ahead filled with potential, both thrilling yet daunting at once. But as breakfast approached along with inevitable goodbyes looming ahead like dark clouds gathering on horizon, I couldn't help but wonder whether this connection would last beyond fleeting moments shared within hotel walls or dissolve back into mundane existence where life continued without fanfare or fireworks. Time dragged painfully slow during those last hours together. Each tick echoed louder than usual against silence hanging thick around us until finally came time for parting ways. The bittersweet taste lingering long after goodbye exchanged along with promises made half-heartedly because deep down both knew realities awaited outside these walls waiting patiently for return home. Back at work after returning from trip, everything seemed unchanged outwardly but inside. It felt different somehow, as if every glance exchanged between colleagues carried hidden meanings now layered beneath surface interactions previously taken for granted. Yet even amidst familiar routines settling back into place, an unease crept into thoughts whenever phone buzzed unexpectedly or messages pinged from inbox indicating presence lingering constantly just out reach. Then came unexpected promotion announcement during team meeting few days later. Applause erupted around room while internally confusion reigned supreme. Was this reward deserved? Or merely consequence stemming from choices made during trip? My husband began noticing shifts too, subtle changes reflected within demeanor speaking volumes louder than words ever could. "Megan," he asked one evening after dinner while clearing dishes away together, a rare moment shared amidst routine chores, "is everything all right?" His eyes searched mine seeking answers buried beneath layers built over years spent constructing walls where love once thrived now felt cracked under pressure mounting steadily over time. I opened mouth readying response but words eluded me. Instead silence enveloped us both leaving questions lingering unaddressed while tension simmered beneath surface threatening eruption any moment now. Each day passed weighed down by uncertainty growing heavier alongside realization lurking just beyond grasp waiting patiently for perfect opportunity strike when least expected. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I kept my head down at work, focusing on tasks that felt more mundane by the hour. The promotion had come through unexpectedly, a recognition of my hard work, or perhaps a way to keep me tethered to the company. My boss's approval felt like a double-edged sword. It came with newfound responsibilities and an unspoken expectation to maintain our connection. Yet, as I stepped into my office each morning, I could sense the shift in energy at home. My husband, once so attuned to my moods, now looked at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. "You seem different," he said one evening over dinner, his brow furrowed as he pushed the green beans around his plate. "Just busy," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. The truth was far more complicated than that. His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer before he nodded slowly. "I get it. Work can be demanding." But there was something in his tone, an undercurrent of doubt that made my stomach twist. I tried to shake off the feeling as I returned to work the next day. The office buzzed with excitement about our upcoming project launch. It was supposed to be a major milestone for our team. My boss was enthusiastic, rallying everyone with promises of success and recognition. But every time he leaned in closer during meetings or praised my contributions, guilt gnawed at me like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. That afternoon, while reviewing reports in my office, I received an unexpected message from him. "Can we talk? Need your insights on something important." My heart raced at the thought of another private conversation, one that could easily blur lines we had already crossed. When I walked into his office, he was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed and a serious expression on his face. I appreciate everything you've done for this project, he began without preamble. But there's something else we need to discuss. My pulse quickened. I braced myself for whatever was coming next. Had he sensed the tension between us? The moments we shared felt electric yet heavy with unspoken words. I want you to lead this initiative, he continued, breaking through my spiral of thoughts. You've got the drive and vision we need. Lead? The word hung between us like a challenge. It meant more responsibility, and more exposure to scrutiny from colleagues who would undoubtedly notice changes in our dynamic. Absolutely, he confirmed, leaning forward slightly as if trying to gauge my reaction. As I processed this news, another message pinged on my phone, this time from my husband. Are you coming home soon? The warmth of his words contrasted sharply with the tension in the room around me. I'll be home soon, I texted back quickly before turning my attention back to my boss. Thank you for trusting me with this. Just don't lose sight of what's important, he said cryptically before dismissing me with a nod. I left his office feeling both elated and trapped, a conflicting cocktail of ambition and guilt swirling inside me like storm clouds ready to burst. Later that evening at home, dinner felt strained. My husband attempted small talk about his day while I picked at my food absent-mindedly. Each inquiry about work seemed layered with unasked questions about what lay beneath the surface of our lives together. You're really busy these days, he noted carefully after a long pause filled only by clinking silverware against plates. Yes, I replied softly, wishing for an escape from both his gaze and my own thoughts. Just, don't forget about us. His voice cracked slightly at those words, a reminder that echoed loudly against the backdrop of everything else happening in my life. As days turned into weeks, juggling work and home life became increasingly challenging. Each interaction with my boss felt charged. Every meeting was laced with an undercurrent of familiarity that blurred professional boundaries further still. And yet every moment spent at home became fraught with tension, a constant reminder of what awaited when I returned from those business trips disguised as weekends away. One evening after returning from another trip where we had spent hours brainstorming ideas together and sharing laughs, I found myself staring at our family photos lining the walls. The smiles frozen in time now felt like ghosts haunting me rather than reminders of joy. I picked up my phone absent-mindedly scrolling through messages when one caught my eye, an old friend reaching out after years apart wanting to catch up over coffee next week. Something stirred within me, an echo of simpler times when life had not been so complicated by choices weighed down by consequences yet unseen. But then another message chimed through, this one from him. Let's celebrate your promotion this weekend. The invitation sent chills down my spine. How could I balance all these pieces without shattering? As Saturday approached and plans solidified for drinks after work hours turned into an unexpected twist, the moment arrived where everything collided head-on during a casual dinner gathering meant only for celebration but now teetering precariously close towards reckoning. While sipping wine amidst laughter filling air around us, the atmosphere shifted abruptly when someone mentioned how much they admired our teamwork lately. The comment hung heavily between us, each glance exchanged laden with meaning unspoken yet palpable enough even among friends gathered nearby who remained blissfully unaware. That night ended abruptly when I returned home late, my husband waiting up despite tiredness etched across features worn thin by worry, his eyes searching mine for answers they were too afraid to ask aloud. What's going on? His voice broke through silence thickening around us like fog rolling over city streets late into night hours filled only by distant sounds echoing memories once cherished now slipping away. I'm just tired, came out too easily, an excuse barely masking deeper truths lurking beneath surface waiting patiently. He studied me closely before shaking head slowly, as if trying desperately to decipher all hidden meanings behind words spoken too lightly. I know you're hiding something. The weight of his statement pressed down hard upon chest constricting breath until it escaped in shallow gasps. How could I possibly explain this tangled web woven between love lost and newfound connections forged amid chaos? In that moment suspended between two worlds, I faced critical choice looming ahead like storm clouds threatening rain, but which path would lead towards clarity amidst confusion? The note from my boss sat on the kitchen table, stark against the warm wood. Its presence loomed larger than the mundane surroundings of my home. I picked it up again, fingers tracing the familiar handwriting, wondering what he truly meant. Looking forward to our next project together, it read. Simple enough, yet there was an underlying tone that felt charged with something more personal. As I stared at the note, memories of our time in Cincinnati flooded back, those late-night conversations that had stretched into dawn, the laughter shared over dinner, and how he listened as if I were the only person in the room. But now, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Had I been just a fleeting interest to him? A distraction from his own life? The door creaked open, pulling me from my reverie. My husband, Tom, stepped inside with a weary smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He dropped his briefcase on the floor and walked toward me, his brow furrowed. "Hey, you okay?" he asked softly. "Just busy," I replied, folding the note and slipping it into my pocket before he could see it. "Busy with work or?" His voice trailed off as he searched my face for answers. "Work," I assured him. "I have a lot on my plate." The words felt like a shield against his probing gaze. Tom nodded but didn't look convinced. He moved to pour himself a glass of water, and I could sense his unease lingering in the air between us. It was as if we were both aware of an invisible wall that had slowly built up over time, a barrier made of unspoken words and unmet needs. Later that evening, while preparing dinner, an old friend from college called unexpectedly. The sound of her voice was a comforting reminder of simpler times when laughter came easily and life felt less complicated. "Megan. It's been ages. How are you?" she exclaimed with genuine warmth. "I'm good, just busy with work," I repeated like a mantra. "Still at that same job?" "You always talked about wanting more out of life," she pressed gently. I hesitated before answering. "Yeah, things are different now." "What do you mean?" She could sense my hesitation through the phone line. "It's complicated." The weight of those words hung heavily between us as memories rushed back, late nights at bars filled with dreams and aspirations that now felt distant. "Are you happy?" she asked suddenly. The question struck me hard. Happiness felt elusive these days, a flickering light just out of reach. "I'm working on it," I finally replied. After hanging up, I stood by the sink lost in thought. The conversation echoed in my mind. Was I truly happy? Or was I merely existing? That night as Tom and I settled onto the couch for our usual routine, him flipping through channels while I scrolled aimlessly on my phone, I found myself distracted by another message from my boss waiting in my inbox. "Let's grab dinner next week to discuss your promotion." My heart raced at the thought of seeing him again outside of work, the thrill mingling strangely with guilt gnawing at me like a persistent ache. What would Tom think if he knew? Would he understand this connection that had developed so unexpectedly? "Everything all right?" Tom's voice pulled me back to reality once more. "Yeah, just work stuff," I muttered absently. He frowned slightly but nodded as if accepting this explanation without question, a habit formed over years spent together where silence filled gaps left by unspoken truths. Days passed slowly leading up to our scheduled dinner, anticipation mixed with anxiety twisted inside me like a coiled spring ready to snap. Each moment spent with Tom felt heavier than before. Conversations dwindled into awkward silences punctuated only by forced smiles and half-hearted attempts at connection. The night arrived finally, an evening cloaked in uncertainty yet laced with excitement as I prepared for dinner with my boss at a trendy restaurant downtown known for its vibrant atmosphere and eclectic menu choices reflecting Cincinnati's diverse culinary scene. As we sat across from each other under soft lights casting warm shadows around us, conversation flowed effortlessly, his charm enveloping me like a warm blanket on a chilly evening while laughter bubbled between us like champagne fizzing in flutes nearby. But beneath this facade lay an undercurrent of tension, a silent acknowledgement of boundaries blurred by circumstance, each shared glance igniting something deeper within me despite knowing full well where such paths might lead if followed too far down their winding roads. Suddenly, amidst our banter about projects and future plans came an unexpected twist. "You know," he leaned closer across the table, voice low enough just for me to hear over clinking dishes around us, "I've always admired your passion for what you do." His words hung heavy between us, a compliment layered with something more intimate than mere professional admiration, a connection forged not solely through work but also through shared vulnerabilities laid bare during late-night talks under stars twinkling overhead during our trip last month. In that moment suspended between two worlds, I faced critical choice looming ahead like storm clouds threatening rain, but which path would lead towards clarity amidst confusion? As we finished dinner and walked out into Cincinnati's bustling streets illuminated by neon signs reflecting off rain-slicked pavement below, my heart raced not just from exhilaration but also fear lurking beneath surface calmness threatening to bubble over any second now. And then it happened. My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket, interrupting thoughts swirling chaotically within. Pulling it out revealed an incoming call from Tom. The familiar name lighting up screen suddenly felt ominous against backdrop filled with vibrant city life surrounding us. "Hey. Can we talk?" His voice sounded strained even through distance separating us, concern laced every syllable making stomach churn uneasily as realization dawned upon me, he must have found something. In that moment, standing outside under harsh streetlights illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware, I knew one truth above all else: whatever happened next would change everything forever. The cold air bit at my skin as I stood, phone pressed to my ear, heart racing. My husband's voice crackled through the line, each word a reminder of the tangled web I had woven. "Megan, we need to talk," he repeated, concern thick in his tone. The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest. "Is everything okay?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. I could hear the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, but all I could focus on was the dread pooling in my stomach. "Not really," he replied. "I found some messages on your phone." Panic surged through me like a jolt of electricity. My mind raced back to the last few days, texts exchanged with my boss that had felt innocent at first but now loomed large and ominous. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "I don't want to go into details over the phone," he said, his voice strained. "Can we meet? Please?" "Okay," I said reluctantly, glancing at my boss standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable as he watched me intently. The distance between us felt insurmountable now. "Where?" "Let's meet at Findlay Market," he suggested after a pause. "In an hour?" "Fine." I hung up, feeling as if the ground beneath me had shifted irrevocably. My boss approached me then, concern etched across his face. "Everything all right?" he asked softly. "No," I replied flatly, unable to disguise the turmoil swirling within me. The vibrant colors of the market around us felt muted now, overshadowed by impending confrontation. "What happened?" His eyes searched mine for answers that even I didn't have. "I have to meet my husband," I said tersely. The words felt heavy on my tongue as if they carried all the weight of my choices. "Is it serious?" His voice dropped an octave, revealing a hint of vulnerability that mirrored my own inner conflict. "Yes." There was no point in sugarcoating it, things had escalated beyond what either of us had anticipated. He nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his gaze before it was replaced by something else, an unspoken tension that hung between us like a fragile thread ready to snap at any moment. "I shouldn't have let it go this far," I admitted quietly. He took a step closer, lowering his voice further as if afraid someone might overhear us. Megan, if you need someone to talk to. I shook my head sharply. This wasn't about him or me anymore, it was about facing consequences head-on. I'll be fine. My words felt hollow even to me as I turned away from him and headed toward my car parked nearby. Driving through Cincinnati's bustling streets felt surreal. Familiar places morphed into reminders of everything that had led me here. The art museum where we used to spend weekends together and the ballpark where laughter echoed with memories now tainted by betrayal. Arriving at Findlay Market brought no comfort. Instead, it amplified the gnawing anxiety twisting inside me like a coiled spring ready to burst free. My husband was already there when I walked in. He stood near a stall filled with fresh produce, arms crossed tightly over his chest, a posture that screamed defensiveness. Megan. He turned sharply as soon as he spotted me, eyes narrowing slightly before softening just enough for me to see how much this hurt him. Hi. My voice came out small against the backdrop of bustling shoppers and vendors hawking their wares. Let's talk outside. He gestured toward an exit leading away from prying ears and curious glances. Once outside under gray skies threatening rain, tension crackled between us like static electricity. What did you find? My question came out more accusatory than intended. Frustration seeped into every syllable. He hesitated for a moment before speaking again, each word laced with pain and disbelief. You've been texting someone who isn't me. A lump formed in my throat as guilt washed over me anew. Those moments shared with my boss replayed vividly in my mind like scenes from an old film reel. Laughter over coffee breaks and late-night conversations that blurred professional boundaries until they faded completely into something else entirely. I can explain. No. His voice rose slightly before he caught himself and lowered it again. Disappointment flickered across his features like shadows dancing under dim light. I just want honesty. I took a deep breath. Honesty felt like an impossible mountain to climb right now, but there was no avoiding it any longer. Not if we were going to salvage anything from this wreckage left behind by poor choices made in search of connection where none existed anymore between us. It's complicated. Those were not words anyone ever wants to say when faced with their partner's hurt, but they slipped out anyway. An attempt at justification that only highlighted how far we'd drifted apart over time without realizing it until now when everything lay bare before us both like raw wounds needing healing yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light. Complicated how? His gaze bore into mine, searching for clarity amidst chaos swirling around us both. Our lives intertwined yet fraying at edges, threatening unraveling completely if not handled delicately, moving forward from here on out together or apart depending upon choices made next few moments, stretching endlessly before us both, uncertain what lay ahead. Beyond this confrontation looming large overhead, casting shadows darker than clouds overhead, threatening rain soon pouring down, washing away remnants left behind by decisions made long ago without thought, given consequences arising thereafter, leading inevitably back here today, standing face to face, confronting truth finally laid bare, exposed raw wounds needing healing, desperately sought after yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light, illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware. Megan. His voice cut through my thoughts sharply, pulling focus back onto him once more, demanding answers, seeking clarity amidst chaos swirling around us both, threatening unraveling completely if not handled delicately, moving forward together or apart depending upon choices made next few moments, stretching endlessly before us both, uncertain what lay ahead beyond this confrontation looming large overhead, casting shadows darker than clouds overhead, threatening rain soon pouring down, washing away remnants left behind by decisions made long ago without thought, given consequences arising thereafter, leading inevitably back here today, standing face to face, confronting truth finally laid bare, exposed raw wounds needing healing, desperately sought after yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light, illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware. I'm sorry, I murmured, finally breaking silence hanging heavy between us. A fragile thread stretched taut, ready snapping under pressure unless handled carefully, moving forward from here on out together or apart depending upon choices made next few moments, stretching endlessly before us both, uncertain what lay ahead beyond this confrontation, looming large overhead, casting shadows darker than clouds overhead, threatening rain soon pouring down, washing away remnants left behind by decisions made long ago without thought, given consequences arising thereafter, leading inevitably back here today, standing face to face, confronting truth finally laid bare, exposed raw wounds needing healing, desperately sought after yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light, illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware. But even as those words escaped lips, trembling slightly, unsure whether they would bring comfort or further anguish instead, I couldn't shake feeling trapped between two worlds colliding violently within one another, leaving nothing but destruction behind. The silence hung heavily in the air, a palpable tension that seemed to stretch infinitely. My heart raced as I stood between my husband and my boss, both men I had cared for in different ways, yet both now demanding answers that felt impossible to provide. The weight of their gazes bore down on me, each filled with unspoken questions and accusations. "Why didn't you tell me?" My husband's voice broke through the stillness, sharp and edged with hurt. His eyes searched mine, looking for something, reassurance or perhaps an explanation that I couldn't muster. "I've been right here, Megan. You just drifted away." I opened my mouth to respond but found no words. How could I explain the loneliness that had crept into our marriage? The nights spent in silence while he buried himself in work? The longing for connection that had driven me into the arms of another? It felt too raw, too vulnerable to lay bare. My boss shifted slightly, his expression a mixture of concern and frustration. "We need to talk about this," he said quietly, but his tone held an authority that made it clear he expected my compliance. "This isn't just about us anymore." I glanced at him, feeling the remnants of our shared moments flicker like a dying flame inside me. Had it really only been a few days since we spent hours talking under the stars? Now those memories felt tainted by guilt and regret. "Is this what you wanted?" My husband's voice rose slightly, breaking through my thoughts. "To throw everything away for, what? A fling?" The accusation stung more than I anticipated. "It wasn't just a fling," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling with emotion. "It was more complicated than that." "Complicated?" He scoffed bitterly. "You mean selfish." His words hit hard, and I flinched at their truth. There was no denying it, I had acted without thinking of the consequences on those who loved me. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I said softly, desperation creeping into my tone as I looked at him pleadingly. But he shook his head, disappointment etched across his features. "You've changed so much over these past months." I was trying to find myself. I interrupted before realizing how defensive I sounded. "Find yourself," he echoed incredulously. "By betraying your marriage?" My heart sank further as shame washed over me like cold water. A part of me wanted to scream back at him, to defend my choices, but another part recognized the truth in his words. In that moment of vulnerability, my boss stepped closer, attempting to diffuse the situation with a calm voice. "Megan, we can sort this out together." "No." My husband's voice thundered through the office space like a clap of thunder rolling across an open field. "This is between us. Not him." The intensity of his anger startled me, it was something I hadn't seen in years. It reminded me vividly of how we used to argue when we first got married, passionate discussions that often ended in laughter or compromise rather than this bitter confrontation. "I never wanted you to find out like this," I pleaded again, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes as emotions threatened to spill over. "Then how did you think it would happen?" His voice softened slightly but remained firm. "I don't know." The admission slipped out before I could stop myself. It felt liberating yet terrifying all at once, the truth laid bare between us like an exposed nerve. My boss shifted again but remained silent. He seemed caught between wanting to support me and recognizing that this was not his fight. As seconds stretched into minutes filled with heavy silence and unspoken words lingering around us like ghosts from our pasts, a realization struck. Both men were waiting for me to choose which path to take next. The thought sent chills down my spine as panic began clawing its way up from within. A choice loomed ahead like a fork in the road where one direction led back toward familiarity while another beckoned toward uncertainty wrapped tightly in desire yet fraught with consequence. I need time. The words fell from my lips almost instinctively as if they were meant more for myself than anyone else present. Time to process everything swirling around inside me before making any irrevocable decisions. But even as those words left my mouth, a sudden vibration cut through the tension. My phone buzzed insistently from where it lay on the desk behind us, a reminder of everything unresolved waiting just beyond reach. Both men turned their attention toward it. Their expressions mirrored mine, curiosity mixed with apprehension, and suddenly all three of us knew whatever awaited on that screen could change everything once again. I hesitated before reaching for it slowly, dread coiling tightly around my stomach as I picked up the device and glanced down at the screen. The name flashing there sending shockwaves through me, Jenna. Jenna was not just any name. She was a colleague who had always seemed overly interested in our team dynamics, but more importantly, she knew about everything happening between us 3 weeks ago during our last meeting when she'd noticed something off about me after returning from Cincinnati. My fingers trembled slightly against its surface as I opened her message. Megan, we need to talk about what happened last week. The implications were clear. The web woven around all our lives was tightening further still as secrets threatened exposure while loyalties unraveled beneath pressure mounting steadily above us like storm clouds darkening skies overhead signaling impending rain soon pouring down washing away. Remnants left behind by decisions made long ago without thought given consequences arising thereafter leading inevitably back here today standing face to face confronting truth finally laid bare exposed raw. Wounds needing healing desperately sought after yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware. And then came another vibration, a second message followed quickly after. It's important. A chill ran through me as realization set in. This was not merely about feelings anymore, it was about survival. Choices made would ripple outward affecting not just myself but everyone entangled within this intricate dance we'd created together now threatening collapse under its own weight unless handled carefully moving forward from here on out together or apart depending upon choices made next few moments stretching endlessly before us both uncertain what lay ahead beyond this confrontation. Looming large overhead casting shadows darker than clouds overhead threatening rain soon pouring down washing away remnants left behind by decisions made long ago without thought given consequences arising thereafter leading inevitably back here today standing face to face confronting truth finally laid bare exposed raw wounds needing healing desperately sought after yet still stinging fresh from exposure under harsh light illuminating shadows cast upon faces passing by unaware. And suddenly, I stood at a crossroads unsure which path would lead toward redemption or ruin leaving nothing but destruction behind.